It's March, which means it's Women's History Month, a time to honor and celebrate the history and achievements of women. This all started as a local celebration in California in 1978 with the Women's History Week. Then in 1980, President Jimmy Carter officially proclaimed the week of March 8th as National Women's History Week. In 1987, it expanded again, with Congress passing a law proclaiming March as Women's History Month. I'm Stephanie Haney, and today we're sharing historic feats of women of the past and the trailblazing work of women in the present. First, we hear from a woman who's helping preserve the past for future generations. Heather Lai spoke to Melissa Brown, the executive director at the Buffalo History Museum in New York. She explains the important role women played in the Queen City.
When Melissa Brown started working at the Buffalo History Museum 25 years ago, she didn't know the role of executive director would be in her future. This self-proclaimed history nerd was just excited to share the Queen City's past with those who walk through the doors.
Being able to really help model a plan for sustaining the organization became exciting to me, and knowing that I could be part of that. The thing that lights me up is being able, I've always appreciated history, but being able to learn my own history and my own place. There's so many layers to it, and you have a story, I have a story, this place has a story, this community has a story.
And Brown is proud to help tell more of those stories, especially those of the women who have helped to shape Buffalo and Western New York.
And now I feel like there is a real push to make that, front and center.
Like when the museum had a World War I exhibit.
Walt, who has been here, he's our director of collections about 30 years. He really set out when he was doing some collecting. We had a lot of uniforms. We did not have the female story represented. He really intentionally set out to collect those stories.
There's Ida Fairbush, the first Black public school teacher in Buffalo, and Mary Burnett Talbert.
She was an international activist, and I think her story is one that people just have not known and recognized.
You can learn more about Talbert and the first female architect, Louise Bethune, in the museum's Continuum exhibit.
We're excited that the physical presence of these women in our landscape, if you see it, you can be it.
Then there's Mrs. St. John, whose home was one of the few in Buffalo to be spared by fire back in 1812.
The stories are definitely there.
Though digging up women's history is often more challenging, in part because women had to take men's names.
You have to be open to going to some unconventional spaces to find things with more, men's history or military history. So much has already been written. So a lot of times you're doing original work.
That work then becomes the foundation for the future.
For where we go going forward is just being really mindful of how we participate as a resource, raising people's awareness for this isn't some ancient history. This is really recent to us, and it really has an active connection in our life.
Women have long pushed the boundaries of societal norms, including in military service. Loretta Perfectus Walsh was the first woman to enlist in the U.S. Navy, and she did it during World War I. She demonstrated a progressive and patriotic zeal that stole America's heart. Courtney Harrison shares her story.
If you're not looking for it, you may miss this historical marker in front of American Legion Post 327 in Oliphant.
There aren't that many for individuals. There are even fewer for women. And it's a neat story that you would never think, I bet that deals with the Navy.
The marker is dedicated to Loretta Perfectus Walsh. Walsh was born in Oliphant on April 22, 1896. After she graduated from school, she took a job with the Navy League in Philadelphia. It wasn't long before Loretta realized she wanted to do more for her country during World War I. But how? Women weren't allowed to enlist. But then an opportunity presented itself. Any civilian could join the U.S. Naval Reserve. So Walsh signed up immediately. On March 21, 1917, Walsh took the oath as the first woman enlisted in the Navy.
If you look at some of the accounts of her enlistment, they're kind of funny because she talks about really wanting to be on a ship. And she had hoped she'd get on a battleship. And then one of the officers told her, well, women can't do that. So, her vision was so huge just in terms of what she wanted to do to help this war effort.
The news of Loretta Perfectus Walsh's enlistment made headlines as she became the poster child for women in the Navy.
There was a press report that called her the dimpled darling of the coalfield. It comes up a lot that she was the girl. You know, you didn't say, oh, she was the first woman. Oh, there's a girl in the Navy. They were very much. This was 1917. They weren't exactly progressive.
Not only was Walsh the first to enlist, she also became the first female petty officer sworn in as chief yeoman, a job title outside of the norm for women in the Navy.
It was hard to make the rank of chief, and it required sea duty. So one of the things I have found in my research is some of the 11,000 yeoman F were rejected or not accepted, not because they were women per se, but because they were allowed to come in at high ranks that it would have taken a male sailor a very long time to achieve.
In 1918, Walsh took on extra duties at the Philadelphia Naval Hospital, helping those sick from the Spanish flu. She too contracted it and recovered. 3 years later, Walsh became ill again and died from tuberculosis at the age of 25. Walsh didn't live a very long life, but the historical significance of the boundaries that she was able to break through still make an impact with generations today.
The service she provided, the way she provided the service, the sacrifices that she made, I think our sailors today can very much resonate with that, and I hope be inspired by what Loretta Perfectus Walsh did at a time when our country needed every American citizen to defeat the Germans.
Walsh was laid to rest here at St. Patrick's Cemetery in Blakely. A memorial was built to honor her service and the other female Navy veterans of World War I. The Navy honors her service each year on March 21st by laying a wreath at her grave. In 2021, one of the USS Constitution's 24-pound long guns was named Perfectus in honor of Walsh's service. Courtney Harrison, Newswatch 16, Lackawanna County.
One of the first ladies in the air, Bessie Coleman, lives on as an inspiration to young Black aviators. She was a groundbreaking pilot, but not a household name. Matt Gregory shares how Coleman broke through the glass ceiling and raised the bar.
Inside the Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Alumni Building in Alexandria, young Black aviators, girls and boys, learn the basics of flight, takeoffs, landings, and something deeper.
This morning, a little Black history segment, and I was telling the students it's very important for them to learn their history.
A history that includes world-famous aviators like the Tuskegee Airmen and more.
We also want to expose them to other aviators, like Bessie Coleman. She's Queen Bess, as she's known.
Bessie Coleman, a pilot as groundbreaking as Amelia Earhart, but not a household name.
The white papers didn't cover her.
After class dismissed, we took a class of our own, among the cloth wings of early flight at the Air and Space Museum.
Bessie Coleman was actually the first African-American woman to be licensed pilot.
Our teacher, Dorothy Cochran, is a curator at the museum.
She was kind of frustrated at being a manicurist. She wanted to do more. And her brothers just said, well, we saw women flying in France.
Coleman's aerial journey started in Chicago in the 1920s, a time in America where it's unheard of for a woman, let alone a Black woman, to be a pilot. So she traveled to France to learn to fly.
So it took her several months to master it all, and then eventually she acquired her license.
Coleman returned to the United States a little-known trailblazer. For the next 5 years, she put on aerial shows and lectures about flight across the country. She inspired an entire country of what could be possible up until her death in an aerial accident in 1926. But for generations, her story traveled a grassroots campaign in the African American community until the 1980s.
We put together a Black Wings exhibit, and that was the first time that she was really celebrated in a major museum at all, that any African American pilots were.
A small memorial to the woman who would not let racist and sexist restrictions hold her back. And today, Queen Bess represents more than a historic first. She charted a path for children like these young pilots to follow.
And the history is very powerful because it can inspire you, it can motivate you, it gives you the will to go on when you face obstacles that are naturally going to come your way.
Matt Gregory, WUSA 9.
Some of the most well-known art in the world was made possible thanks to women's skill and influence. Even if you haven't noticed, you've no doubt seen it. In Virginia, Ashley Smith introduces us to one of the most respected sculptors in American history, Anna Hyatt Huntington.
If you've been to the Chrysler Museum of Art, you've seen the work of Anna Hyatt Huntington. Her sculpture, The Torchbearers, greets visitors. The statue was gifted to the city of Norfolk in 1957. Born in 1876, Anna Hyatt Huntington was one of the most famous American women sculptors of the 20th century. At a time when very few women could support themselves as artists, Huntington had a thriving career. Her work can be seen today in New York, San Francisco, Madrid, and across Hampton Roads. In 1930, Anna and her husband founded the Newport News Mariners Museum and Park. Her sculptures of 4 stone lions can be seen along Lions Bridge, and her monument, Conquering the Wild, overlooks Mariners Lake.
Women's representation in U.S. politics has grown significantly since women were first officially involved in the late 1800s. The Greater Grand Rapids Women's History Council highlights some of the women that ran for public office during the 1970s. Veronica Ortega introduces us to these trailblazing women who paved the way for political leaders of today.
During the second surge of the 1970s, women like former Second Ward Commissioner Mary Alice Williams broke down barriers in an effort to have their voices heard.
My family and I moved to Grand Rapids in 1974, and we located in the Easttown neighborhood. And there were housing issues, crime issues, zoning issues. And I got involved in it. A community organizer knocked on my door one day, and I signed a petition, and the rest is history.
It's a long history that spans decades, with women running for public office in Kent County since as early as 1887.
Lyndon Johnson in 1978 was the first African-American woman actually to be elected and seated on the Grand Rapids School Board. A number of women had run starting in 1951, but she was the first woman elected to office. So there's all kinds of range that this program will cover.
It was common during the time for women to serve, sometimes alone, alongside their male counterparts.
So we worked with 19 men, which was a lesson for me because I grew up with 6 older sisters, so I wasn't real familiar working with men. I learned a lot quickly. And I always found it strange that they seemed to be so nervous about every vote that they took. I always felt pretty solid about what my vote was.
And while progress has been made in the decades since the second surge, we've elected the first female mayor of Grand Rapids, Rosalind Bliss, and Hillary Skolton is the first woman to represent Michigan's 3rd congressional district in the U.S. House of Representatives. These pioneers say more work needs to be done to close the gender gap in politics.
If the truism is that women hold up half the sky, then we need to be in at least half the places where decisions are being made that affect our daily lives.
It's a battle these women fought fearlessly, and even more women continue to do so to this day.
Paying attention to the impact women have had on the world is something that should extend long past the month of March. Photojournalist Amy Hunter shares how one Colorado artist is making sure those memories live on.
With each stroke of the brush,
with being watercolor, it's got to start light.
Cheryl Garcia honors a legacy of women who shaped history.
I just realized how we're losing these women through time, and I just didn't want to do that. I wanted to keep them up front in everybody's minds.
Garcia started her series during the pandemic. She calls it Wacky Women in History.
I want to be comical, but I also want to be respectful. I do each one of them based on something that strikes me, like some famous saying, something that they've done.
From Michelle Obama to Billie Jean King, the collection includes 38 pieces, with more on the way.
I can't stop because people keep sending me more and more names of women that I need to do. So, and I like doing it, so I'm going to keep doing it.
The project holds a special place in Garcia's heart. It brought back the desire to paint after her wife died.
Her name was Victoria Erickson. Then when she passed away, which was in 2018, I stopped painting altogether. I just didn't have it in me to do it anymore. She would have loved the Wacky Women because she herself actually was a wacky woman.
People may not know Erickson, but no one's meant more to Garcia.
She was really something special, I have to say.
Her favorite wacky woman continues to inspire her years after she's gone.
I feel like her picture is right here, and so she's always with me in some fashion. You know, after 20 years, you can't ever forget somebody. So anyway.
Now to women who are making history in our modern day, like one NASA engineer who is making big contributions to the field of space exploration. Isabel Lawrence introduces us to Dr. Lindsay McMillan Brown and shows us what a scientist can look like.
When it comes to what you can achieve in life, many believe the sky is the limit. But this woman's dreams are out of this world. Dr. Lindsay McMillan Brown is a research electrical engineer at NASA Glenn Research Center, working on solar cell technology that will provide power in space. But long before she donned her white lab coat,
I felt like I lost all my cool cards when I went with the pocket protector, but
she was a self-proclaimed tinkerer and explorer growing up in Russell, Ohio.
I loved nature walks with my dad. And my dad and I would also work in the garage, and he would repair the car. And my mom was a science teacher.
Dr. McMillan Brown frequented the Great Lakes Science Center and even attended space camp. As a student at Hawkins School and through her first few years at Miami University in Ohio, she had her heart set on becoming a doctor. But a college internship at NASA Glenn opened her eyes to a whole new way of making an impact.
So I did promise my mom I'll still be a doctor, just not that kind of doctor. And at Yale, I studied chemical engineering, and I got my master's and PhD there. Having NASA as my goal and my finish line really helped to motivate me when times got tough, because I was working towards something bigger.
She accomplished that goal.
On here, we have 6 small solar cells, so the gold pads in the middle are each marking a different device.
Returning to NASA to continue working on solar cells as she had in her internship.
They're really helpful for us as we try to look to more clean and energy or environmentally friendly ways to supply our energy demand. Solar power is even more necessary in space because there are no power outlets on the moon. So when we get there, we need to bring a power source with us.
In the lab, Dr. McMillan Brown tackles big challenges. But she's overcome challenges of her own, too.
Did you ever run into the naysayers, the people in your life who said, I don't think you've got what it takes to be in this field?
Absolutely, yeah, quite directly sometimes. But I was able to overcome that by relying on the people who did believe in me and kind of having more positive voices in my mind than negative ones.
Finding her way in an industry that she describes as largely male and white.
I try to be present and do a lot of outreach in the community and show people that I am what a scientist looks like and I am what a researcher looks like.
A role model for the next generation to, quite literally, reach for the stars.
And I owe that to my parents, who made me feel that I could do anything. So I was already charged to think that there were no limitations on me because I was a girl, or no limitations on me because I was a Black girl. So I felt that I could do anything.
Dr. McMillan Brown is proof that when you do, something extraordinary can happen. Today, she's focused on developing a new class of solar cells called perovskites.
And the amazing thing about this technology is they could actually be manufactured in space. So we're working on making a way such that you could take a small container of your initial materials with you, and then when you get there, you would print them out, almost like how we print newspapers now.
If you had to say something to the little girl maybe dreaming of doing this one day, what would you say to her now?
Don't put any limitations on yourself. Surround yourself by positive people who are uplifting, who believe in you and support your life's work and your mission, and go for it.
And now to a trailblazer in the health field. Brianna Dahlquist introduces us to one doctor from the Cleveland Clinic who is making sure women get the opportunity they deserve.
Meet Dr. Sonali Sethi, a pulmonologist who is blazing trails for women in the largely male-dominated industry.
I have to say, I started this field about
15 years ago, and there was a handful of women only. There were maybe 5 of us in the field. So it was very difficult for me to find a mentor at that time when I decided that this is what I wanted to do.
Nevertheless, Dr. Sethi persisted. Not only did she graduate at the top of her class during her fellowship at St. Vincent's Hospital in New York, but she also found mentors that were willing to help.
I was very lucky. I had women pioneers that I latched onto, 2 in particular nationally. And I fell in love with this field and I decided it's what I wanted to do.
And now she's making it her mission by helping other women by breaking barriers in pulmonology.
We did realize as a group of women, being only 6 or 7 of us throughout the entire country, that this was, mentorship was a problem for women. There weren't enough of us, and we needed to advocate for ourselves. So there were a few of us who got together and actually formed a group called the Women in Interventional Pulmonary. It's a national society now. We are now over 100 members.
Colleague Dr. Thomas Gildia is the section head for pulmonology at the Cleveland Clinic. He remembers a young Dr. Sethi just out of school and saw greatness within her.
It's easy to advocate for women when you work with, amazing women and you're married to an amazing, brilliant woman. And it just becomes easy to, to just recognize people for their value, not necessarily based on their sex or gender.
He implores other men not to be afraid to advocate for women, not just in medicine, but in all industries. He said more men might learn a thing or two.
People will put you in a box. We'll assume that women don't do certain things. Women don't do orthopedics or women don't do surgery. Well, that's clearly not the case. And, it's getting easier and easier. And I hope that people avail themselves of the opportunity to just take a look around and recognize that there are people ahead of you that are doing remarkable things. And they are there because they worked really hard.
Dr. Sethi says she doesn't know where she'd be without her mentors.
I was very lucky throughout my career, which is why I've gotten to where I've gotten. It's solely because of the mentorship I had. That's what we all need to be doing.
Brianna Dahlquist, 3 News.
Whether protecting and serving or delivering life-saving care, women working in emergency services are being recognized for being the heroes that they are, all while changing the face and culture of local emergency service departments. Isabel Lawrence is back with us now with a pioneering female fire captain at the Chagrin Valley Fire Department in Ohio who is paving the way and inspiring more women to join.
I really think that I got bit by the bug of firefighting. You're trying to figure out what to do for these people on their worst day, where they have grief, where they have loss, where they have tragedy, and you're able to help.
Alita Vetter has helped countless people in her 30-plus-year career firefighting, serving at both Chagrin Valley Fire Department and in Warrensville Heights. In both communities, she was the first woman on the department.
It wasn't really the pressure of being the first female, it was the pressure of being accepted, more so. I knew that it was a position that I felt that I could do, but I felt that I had to prove myself constantly with the male-dominated field.
Vetter, forced to chart a path not easily taken.
I had a guy come up to me and ask me why I was there. Literally said, "Why aren't you barefoot, having babies and cooking in the kitchen?" So what does that do? That motivates you, right? To prove them wrong.
And she did, rising to the rank of captain at both departments.
She had to prove herself, probably twice over. I give her all the accolades in the world for doing what she's done.
There to see her climb, Chagrin Valley Fire Chief Frank Zugan. He joined the department alongside Vetter, bearing witness to her triumphs and challenges.
She was put on the department in 1987. She was the first female firefighter in our department history. It was extremely difficult for her back then, and she broke down the door and laid the groundwork for many more women to be members of our department. I'm really proud of her for doing that.
Currently, there are 7 women in Chagrin Valley Fire, a number Zugan hopes will continue to grow, even as Vetter prepares to wind down her career, leaving an inspiring legacy behind.
It's really cool to see a younger generation come up and take my place
You can tell by these girls that they really want to be here. They want to do the job.
Setting the stage for the next wave of women to take the reins.
Hi, I'm Brittany Isom, Vanessa Zelli, Megan Linsky. I'm Bridget Carr, Katie O'Malley, Libby Galicki. I'm a firefighter and EMT, firefighter, paramedic, engineer, and I've been here for just about 5 years. Been here for 3 years. 8 months. 6 months. 3 months. 3 months.
6 women driven to serve the community and support one another along the way. Vetters' influence and the importance of representation not lost on Vanessa Zelli.
The difficulties that she's had to have to make it easier for us to get into this job is just something that I can never, ever thank her enough for. It's just an amazing thing to have.
And something Katie O'Malley knows shouldn't be wasted.
It's an incredible responsibility because we kind of owe it to the people that came before us, especially the females, to carry on their legacy.
Newest to the job is Libby Galicki.
I think it's just having that determination and having the passion to help people.
That passion runs in Megan Linsky's blood.
This is a picture that I have from when I was in Girl Scouts. It's my dad back when he was a blue shirt. He's a captain at Mayfield Heights now.
Her father, her role model. But now she has some new role models too.
And then to have Alita here and like Brittany and Vanessa to talk to all of them about it. And then even just like little things like how do you do your hair for work or how do you do your hair to dawn up? It's just so nice because you have that support.
All finding a home in the Chagrin Valley Fire Department.
It's like family, so you work with your family every day pretty much. It's a job I never knew I needed, so I loved it. It's perfect.
Proving that there's nothing they can't do.
If it's possible, I can do it. If a guy can do it, I most definitely can do it.
Fighting fires and breaking down barriers.
You know, I'm really excited to see what the future holds for all of these ladies. I think their futures are bright. I just can't wait to see what they do for our department.
The next generation of lifesavers standing on the shoulders of those who came before. Like Vetter.
She serves as such a role model for us, and she just has so much respect from all of us because she has paved the way for all of us and made it possible for us to be here now.
As we celebrate Women's History Month, you may want to check out some women-owned businesses. In Charlotte, North Carolina, for example, you can find a woman and minority-owned bakery that is enjoying sweet success. Austin Walker shares how with every sale, the owner is paving the way for other women business owners.
You guys need anything else?
This collection of confectionaries and savory selections
That bread pudding is to die for.
has always been a dream for Karina Cooper.
But my passion is always the pastries.
She was born and raised in the Dominican Republic. Moving to Charlotte, now that dream is a reality.
It's not a piece of cake. Like everybody asks me, oh my God, how you did it? It's not easy.
That's what you would like? She says as a first-time business owner here in the U.S., there were hurdles to opening the doors of La Doceca, many of them because she was a woman, saying people thought of her as incapable.
They say, oh my God, you're a strong woman. Yes, I am.
According to the national data by the Women's Business Enterprise National Council, at least 40% of U.S. businesses are women-owned. And according to data by NerdWallet, Latino women-owned businesses grew by more than 87% from 2007 to 2012. It's an all-women show here.
It's just me and my daughters, and sometimes my mom.
She's hoping to use her experience to inspire others.
All the women to try. It doesn't matter if you fail or not, try. Because it's worth the risk. You know, you can do it, like we can do it.
And if you ask customer Acacia Dotson, it's working.
Me personally, like I see this and I think like it's so inspiring because, you know, I want to have my own business one day too.
When it comes to her pastries,
oh, secret ingredients, I cannot tell you that.
She won't fess up on why it's so good, but is open on the secret ingredient to success.
Passion and believe in yourself.
In Charlotte.
But this is for us and we're gonna do it and we can make it and we can do it, so let's go.
Austin Walker, WCNC Charlotte.
Now to a business embracing the spirit of inclusivity. A Latina-owned pop-up bookstore and restaurant highlights minority voices and an inclusive reading culture. Rachel Williams shares how Diana Dominguez makes history one pop-up at a time.
For me, it's really important to have representation in the books that we're reading.
Dominguez started her business last year. She says she saw an unmet need in the community and decided to curate a space.
All of the books that I carry within the bookstore have been either authored, illustrated, or it tells the stories of our communities.
Más Libritos doesn't have a brick and mortar store, so she's partnering with another Latina-owned restaurant called Bites and Bowls. She says it's important for women to support women.
Especially as Latinas, we're a rising population or demographic that is opening businesses in the United States, but there's still that lack of infrastructure when it comes to access to capital, to mentorship, and to networking.
When you look for a collaboration, it's not that you're always looking for a win-win, right? Sometimes you have to open the door to someone and you may not get a win right at the beginning.
Owner of Bites and Bowls, Sandra Carrasco, hosts Más Libritos once a month and says in their case, it's a win-win.
First pop-up, it was busy here, so it translates to good sales to us. But more than that, we have to think about what Más Libritos will bring to the community, right? So it's the books, in my opinion.
And most importantly, the books cater to audiences that aren't always represented.
When we have a collection that calls the attention of the young Latinos, or even my own son, right? When we see bilingual books, I'm looking more for what is coming and what this is going to create.
I always talk about reading as a space for me where I can dismantle, challenge, learn, and relearn a lot of things about myself. And I think I want that. I want that the community to be able to experience that, but also how can they experience that if they don't have access to those books?
Every year, we take the month of March to focus on the achievements of women throughout American history. Highlighting the contributions of women is invaluable in educating the general public and inspiring the next generation of trailblazers. I don't know about you, but I feel pretty inspired. Thanks for watching. I'm Stephanie Haney.